Gold, in collaboration with Arts Mid-Hudson, featuring a diverse mix of artivists, artist-activists who have taken up the charge through their art to highlight social issues. We invite you to ask questions and get an inside look at the hearts and minds of these courageous creatives.
Welcome, everyone, to Leading with Artivism. I'm your host, Poet Gold, and we're here today with Rock Wilk. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about him right from the top. Rock Wilk's Broke Wide Open was born as an independently released, self-produced music album in 2007, before being developed into a solo theatrical work. Was workshopped at PS 122 in New York City as a part of the Underground Festival, had 10 performances at the Camden Fridge Festival in London, England, a sold-out performance at the United Solo Theatre Festival back in New York City, and was presented as a main stage production at the Passage Theatre in Trenton, New Jersey. In November, his play 2012, right? Broke Wide Open enjoyed a highly acclaimed off-Broadway run at the New Theatre at 45th Street for almost 4 months and was directed by Stephen Bishop Seeley. In 2014, Rock appeared in his first feature film, Jamesy Boy, which stars James Woods, Mary Louise Parker, and Ving Rhames, and was directed by Trevor White. Rock is a recipient of the 2016 Brio Award for acting, awarded by the Bronx Council on the Arts. His second play, Brooklyn Quartet, which is directed by Reggie Gaines, Bring in the Noise, Bring in the Funk, was a finalist at the Downtown Urban Arts Festival in New York City, and had 10 performance workshops at the Medicine Show Theater, also in New York City. Had its official debut in the Pergolas Theater in the Bronx in June of 2016, and was presented for the first time as an ensemble play produced by Auroville Theater Group in India in 2019. Wow, in India, huh? Okay. As an ambitious marriage of live theater and film in collaboration with New York City filmmaker David C. Diaz, Brooklyn Quartet was adapted as a 4-part episodic miniseries. COVID shut down the debut of the new play written by Rock, The Red Plaid Suitcase, which was adapted to an award-winning smartphone film, Rock's debut as a filmmaker, called The Center of Distance. His second full-length feature film, This Is the End for Me, which was awarded Best Coming of Age Feature Film at the Manhattan Film Festival this past June of 2024, after its premiere at Cinema Village in Manhattan. Most recently, Rock completed a full-length feature documentary, Be the Poem, about me. Okay, and it's been released for 2026. Welcome, Rock.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have. I've been waiting for this moment.
Me too.
Yeah. So I want to start here. On your website, you have, my mission is to create work that is disruptive in a way that encourages and inspires, to elevate us all to a higher level of empathy, to create community, both locally and globally. Now, that was for me a wow moment. I'm going to tell you why, because a lot of artists don't have mission statements, like performing artists or filmmakers. They don't have mission statements on their website. We put bios and we talk about what we do, but not really what our mission is. What made you be intentional about when people come to your sort of like space to say, this is what I'm about, in a very clear and distinct manner?
Because I think that's why, well, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, that's why I make art. That's why I do the work that I do. I'm actually not very ambitious in terms of being a celebrity or being a star or anything like that. I'm just trying to do work that contributes to people thinking about things that they generally might not feel comfortable thinking about, and trying to create discussions around that and dialogue. That's why I have Q&As after every performance that I do. And the Q&As are sometimes better than the show. We talk about the show for like 5 minutes, then all of a sudden people start talking about their lives. And that's what I'm most proud of with the work, really.
So you're a versatile artist. You're a poet. I think when initially we were introduced, when we met, you were
in music still.
In music, you were still in music still, and then you transitioned into poetry. Sean Bell, did you do no? which poem did you do? At the New Weekend, the slam, that you.
I did a lot of them.
I know, but there was a specific poem. Was it the Sean Bell poem? Or no?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Sean Bell.
Well, the first time I ever showed up to the New Eurekan, I did a part of a monologue from Broke Wide Open, my first play.
Right. Okay.
And apparently it was a poem, so it did really well. But the Sean Bell piece was originally a song.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, and evolved into the foundation of Brooklyn Quartet, the play.
Okay.
It was originally a Broke Wide Open, and I thought it was the strongest part of that play. And my director said, I think you should cut that out.
Really?
What are you talking about? It's like the best part of the play. He goes, yeah, it's got nothing to do with this play. So I decided to trust him, and he was so right. You know.
Tell the viewers and those who are listening online the premise of Broke Wide Open, and then we can also bring up a slide so they can see the mural from Broke Wide Open as well, and some of the pictures that are related to that. But tell the viewers about Broke Wide Open.
Broke Wide Open was born from an album, which I just gave everybody a copy of. I did an album just before I left the music business called Broke Wide Open. And it was in large part about my very ambivalent search for my biological mother. You know, I was fostered and adopted. And my whole life, people were like, don't you want to know about your mother? And I was like, not really. But then all of a sudden, I don't know, something changed inside of me and I became obsessed with it. And so I wrote a play, which, well, I didn't know it was an adoption play. It became an adoption play because the entire adoption community around the world found me.
Right.
But it was just about my life. You know, it was like, you know, like I teach a lot of writing workshops and performance workshops. And I always tell people that I think it's really important to write a memoir piece. Like everybody should write about themselves before they write about anything else, because that's what you know the best. And so that's what that was about. So it actually started like a 17-year trilogy, like crazy, you know, it just changed my whole life. So yeah, the premise was this, you know, like based on information that I had gotten about my biological mother, which I subsequently found out were like all lies. But it was like the greatest experience of my life, like the most difficult, but also the best, you know, like the most, I think that's when I grew the most as an artist.
It's probably a very vulnerable a journey in your life also, and then just and expose that to an audience.
Yeah,
you know, literally Broke Wide Open.
Very intimate.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you find that does your poetic voice influence how you deliver lines in your playwriting at all, and that cadence that comes with doing spoken word? Do you find that there's an intersection when it comes to delivering your dialogue in your plays at all?
You might not like this.
No, go. No. It's quite all right. It's quite all right.
I don't like that cadence. Like I stay away from it. You know?
Right.
And you know, because I was guided to the poetry clubs, but I was working on a play.
Okay.
And I didn't like the whole, you know, cadence thing, and it just didn't feel genuine to me.
I feel you on that.
So I never went in that direction. But you know, I did have, you know, I was, you know, when I was still in the music business, I still had some. Even though I was definitely never a hip hop artist, I had, you know, I was very influenced by hip hop culture. And so, yeah, you know, I think there's an intersection of everything that I do, like music, poetry, theater, film, everything. Like everything that I learn, I use. So I don't really look at it that way. You know, like I think it all is influenced by whatever I'm feeling in the moment, you know. But I don't really think about cadence. I don't think about anything technically like that. I really always just think about sharing a story, you know, like connecting with an audience, and it's a conversation. And however, you know, I know that my stuff is very stylized, you know, and like blazing fast, but I don't really think about it. It just comes out.
So how do you know that a story needs to be told? Like I know Broke Wide Open turned out to be part of like a trilogy.
Yeah.
You know, how do you know what story is compelling to be told for you? And I'm going to write that play.
Well, partially because, I mean, I was in the music business for a long time, And I don't have one song before the last album that I cared anything about, in terms of story. It was all I mean, I was a jazz musician, so I just came from music, like instrumental music. Lyrics meant nothing to me at that time. But that was because I would write lyrics, and my manager at the time and record companies, every time I tried to write something meaningful that I cared about, they didn't support it, because generally it was about racism or, all the horrible things. And so that was the main reason I shifted my whole thing, my whole creative life, because I wanted to tell stories, and I wanted to share things that I felt were meaningful. And like why do it otherwise, to me? I'm not trying to entertain only. I mean, obviously I want to entertain people, but so, I promised myself, and I think I got this from my first director, I promised myself I would never get on stage and never speak a word in front of an audience unless I felt like I had to, like I would die if I didn't do it. Like it was like so important that I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I couldn't function. I have to share this story. Like, I got this problem and we have to solve it together. So anything that I do, it's because I feel like I have to, like it hurts me not to do it. Not that I feel like it's so important to everybody else, but from my perspective, I just feel like it'll break me down, I'll get, like I'm obsessed with it, and so I have to get it out. And just writing it is not enough for me. Like for me, it's all about getting with the people when the people show up and sharing it, and having that conversation. That's what it is for me.
What I find amazing about your work is your ability to memorize. It's stunning. It really is. I mean, I know that, you'll get to a project and then you totally engulf yourself in that project for a period of time. You like lose a chunk, out of your life, and just for
5 years,
5 years,
yeah.
7 years, just for that project.
Yeah.
But your ability to line by line, night after night, it amazes me. It really does.
Well, for me, again, it's really important because first of all, I don't read very well. Like that's like kryptonite for me. If I'm reading my lines, it's not the same.
Okay.
But I also feel like personally, again, this is just me. I feel like, and this is what I teach in my workshops. Like I tell people, you should really memorize it because then it's coming from the inside out of your body. Like it's in your body as opposed to reading it on the page. And, probably just because I don't do that well, but I don't feel like I'm able to share the story in its most visceral, fundamental self unless I have it memorized in my body. Like when I read it, I feel detached, and I also feel like there's something in between me and the audience. I don't want that. That's why I don't use microphones. I don't want anything in front of me and the people who are standing, who are like kind enough to show up and receive the story. And I want it to come from. It's just different for me when it's in my body. Gotcha. It's very, very spiritual kind of thing.
So what came after Broke Wide Open? What
Brooklyn Quartet.
Brooklyn Quartet, right? That was amazing.
Yeah. Broke Wide Open closed for bad reasons. I made some really bad business decisions.
Okay.
And I just wouldn't do it anymore because I didn't want anybody else to make any money off of it. And Brooklyn Quartet. So I tell people all the time, like Broke Wide Open was the most important thing for me to do in terms of creating a piece of art that changed my life. But Brooklyn Quartet was the most important thing to me. Like to, based on the Sean Bell shooting and talking about racism. And I've been that person since I was a little boy.
Right. So
after Broke Wide Open, I decided to go do, what I felt was important to me to do, and like you just said, it took 5 years.
Right. And Brooklyn, let me say, because I think I saw most of them. Brooklyn Quartet was connected with Reggie Gaines. Was that the one? Right.
Well, he came on after it started. Like I started it with Steven, the same director as Broke Wide Open.
Okay.
And that was like 3 years with Steven. And Reggie came on. I wound up doing his festival. Then I asked him to direct it, Well, actually, I have a great story about Reggie. So I wrote Brooklyn Quartet. After Broke Wide Open closed, I was like incredibly depressed, like bad. And I thought, if I don't do something, I'm like, this is scary. So I locked myself in my apartment. I was living in Bed-Stuy at the time. And I wrote that play. I wrote 278 pages in 3 days, like just knocked it out.
Wow.
And the whole time, and I didn't sleep, I didn't do anything. And I had Coltrane's A Love Supreme cycling in the background the whole time. And so I wrote it. So I submitted it to the Downtown Urban Arts Festival, which is Reggie's festival.
Right.
I didn't even know who Reggie Gaines was.
Okay.
I just knew that festival. And somebody had recommended it to me. So I submitted, but I didn't know who he was. I never even heard of him. So literally a year later, I get a phone call. I'm sitting with Mr. Rollins, a friend of mine. And I get this message from somebody and it says, Reggie Gaines. And I'm like, who the hell is Reggie? Like, who is this? I just thought it was some friend of mine playing playing jokes with me. So I just ignored it. So like about an hour later, I get another message. Goes, this is Reggie Gaines. Call me back. And he leaves a number. So he goes, is this Rock Wilk? I said, yeah. He goes, this is Reggie Gaines. I'm like, who's Reggie Gaines? So then he goes, he goes, I read your play. I'm like, how'd you get my play? What are you talking about? He goes, you submitted it. I'm like, I don't even know who you are. So then he tells me, he puts it all together. I'm like, okay. Downtown Urban Arts Festival. So this is the first time we ever spoke. And he said to me, I just wanted to call you directly. I don't call anybody, I read 150 scripts every year. I wanted to call you directly and tell you that I loved it so much. These characters, he was really, praising it. But he said, listening to Brooklyn Quartet, like reading it in my head, I felt like I was listening to A Love Supreme.
Oh my God.
And I was like, no, you didn't just say that. So I was like, wow. So, and then because of that, I asked him if he would direct.
Okay.
So.
All right.
But it was already, he said, the only reason I'm going to direct you is because it's already done. He ain't got no time for that. So, but it was great, being close to him for quite a while. And he's such a smart guy, and beyond even his playwriting and all that. He's just a really deep human. So, it was great. And Brooklyn Quartet, I became close with Sean Bell's family because of that play. So that also changed my life in other ways.
So just to give the audience some context about Reggie was a spoken word poet, playwright, as Rock pointed out. Also, some people may know him from his piece, Who Stole My Air Jordans? He wrote that piece, was on Arsenio Hall show, poetry, right? And so that's that relationship.
And he wrote Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Funk, the Broadway
play. Yeah. So let's talk about audience members and your experience. How do you hope the audience feels about experiencing your work? Or do you have an expectation?
That's an interesting question. I would like to ask you that question too, but I don't hope. Honestly, I feel honored that anybody shows up. You know what I mean? I feel grateful, and that's what I say to myself before every show. And I go, let me experience with these people tonight who showed up, and then I just, like at the end of every show, I'm in the dressing room sobbing because I've used every ounce of my spirit in every show. Like I can't see anybody, like I'm dead, done. And I hope that they feel connected, I think what I'm most proud of is that when you come to one of my shows, the audience is filled with everybody, like every kind of person you can imagine.
Absolutely.
And the Q&As are so powerful. It's like a religious experience. So I feel like we've connected, and that's really what I hope for. I don't hope like they think, oh, he's the greatest or whatever. I hope they feel like it's, when I was a little kid, my father once said to me, what are you afraid of? And I said, I'm afraid of, being forgotten, like, or just taking up space. He's like, you're 5. What kind of answer is that for a 5? But I hope that every experience is unforgettable, and that they think about the things, because, I know I put a lot of stuff in my work that's not comfortable for a lot of people, and sometimes, difficult. Like a friend of mine sent me something that she saw that Banksy put on the side of a building. I don't think he wrote this, but it says, art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. And I live by that.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. I try to people I love that, but I think I hate you, or I'm not sure I like that so much. Or, it's like, but, things that I feel like people don't want to talk about. And the thing is, like, okay, so being that person kind of ruined my life for a long time. Like, nobody's inviting me to their party, because I'm going to bring up every horrible thing. Like, if somebody makes a joke that's kind of a racist joke or whatever, I'll never keep my mouth shut.
Right, you can address it.
So I tell people all the time, like, theater saved my life, because I was able to take these difficult things and turn them into something beautiful, like a theater, like a bed of wildflowers.
Right.
And we're talking about, war and racism and misogyny and homophobia and all the things, except that it's, like Brooklyn Quartet is a love story, but it's about Sean Bell being murdered by New York City police. Right. But people fall in love with the characters, because they're beautiful people, because people are beautiful.
And people find a connection there.
Yeah.
They're able to say, if that's not me, that's my friend, that's my neighbor. And there's a connection. And you're right about the people who come see your plays. What I'm always fascinated by, it's not one type of person. It's so many different type of people that have different perspectives in life, but yet somehow in the context of what they're seeing, there's a common thread. Yeah. There becomes a common thread of humanity. There's a common thread of I'm going to be pushed to grow.
Yeah, and we're all the same.
Right, we're all the same. Absolutely. What was one of the best feedbacks or feedback from any of your body of work that you greatly appreciated that sort of shifted maybe a perspective for you?
Well, one of the most memorable things for me was I did a Q&A after Brooklyn Quartet, and one of the characters is named Esther Alvarez, right? So she's a Dominican Jew, and she grew up in the Heights, and she's she was the valedictorian of her class, and a beautiful, I called her 6 feet tall and brownstone beautiful. And she's got a sharp mouth and, a sewer mouth, but she is like, she's like out there, she's a hurricane. So anyway, after the show, a woman in the audience with long, beautiful, looked like she went to a Dominican, hair salon to have it, straightened. She goes, "What does Esther Alvarez look like?" And I'm like, well, all of these characters are based on 4 people from my personal life. But what does she look like to you? That's for you. I'm not here to tell you what she looks like. I mean, Reggie used to say to me that one of the best things about theater is to give people the opportunity to imagine. So you tell these stories, especially as a solo theater artist. There's nobody else on stage. Right. So, it's like people have said to me sometimes, it's like we're seeing these ghosts walking around you, these characters that you created. So I said, what does she look like to you? And she's like, she's tall and light skinned. It's got, long straight hair. And there's a woman on the other side of the theater with the biggest hair in the history of the world, darker skin. She's like this. And I'm like, okay. And she goes, no way Esther Alvarez had straight hair. She's got a big natural, she would never do that. She would never straighten her hair because politically she knows. So they got into this political, socio-political argument. Like they were going to come to blows. Really? And the audience, it became like a whole thing. And I sat on stage and I was like, this is why I wrote this play, because they were so emotional about it because they took ownership of her. But Esther Alvarez was somebody who, got into the corporate world, did certain things that she wasn't proud of, but felt like she had to because she was a woman of color and a woman. And, so it was a very complicated story and easy to judge, but for anybody who could relate to her, you can't judge her. She had to do what she had to do, but other people felt like there were certain things she would never do, like she would never compromise. So that just made me realize, like, be really responsible with what you're writing, and let people decide, tell the truth, tell the story, tell the truth. Everything that I wrote in that was based on true stories,
Right.
Not maybe they didn't happen to me, but people I knew personally. And tell the truth, and make them, make the people as human as possible, and not anything else, nothing more than just like all of us. And that was, I mean, I've had a lot of really amazing experiences like that, but I remember that one all the time.
I'm glad you brought up truth, because that led me actually to my next question. And I was going to speak about truth with you. How has the definition of truth in art changed over your career, and what is truth to you?
Well, truth in art to me is like, that's what you can immediately feel in an artist. Like, like a great actor always feels like I love Jeffrey Wright. He's one of my favorite actors. And the reason is that I've never seen a word come out of his mouth that I didn't believe in any role that he's played. Now he's playing a role. He's playing a person that's not real, but he speaks the truth. When I saw him on Broadway in Angels in America, he spoke the truth. Like, I feel like, I think it's got to be genuine. Like, okay, so a good example. I had a poem that I used to do. An old girlfriend who I lived with for 7 years, a long time ago. She had a horrible experience as a kid. She was actually, I could say this because I talked about it in this poem for like 12 years, but she was raped by her grandfather every day when she was 8, 9, and 10 years old. And I wrote a poem about it. And actually, I was in a workshop with a poet that I really respect, this guy, Carlos Andres Gomez. And he said, I want you to pick the most horrible, the most heinous person you could ever imagine. And I want you to write a poem about that person and why they might have become that person. Like, humanize them. And so I wrote about him, the grandfather. And I remember, and that poem won me so many slams. And I kind of hate slam because I don't appreciate when art becomes, like sports.
Right, competitive.
Yeah. I don't like that. But, slams were good for me because it really built a huge following for me. I got these gigantic audiences built in. You go to New York and there are 300 people there on a Friday night. So anyway, I did this poem a lot, and I'll never forget one night I did a show. I had a friend, this woman named Mia Roman, who actually, Mia designed the Broke Wide Open logo.
Okay.
So she's a great artist, and she had an event called Femicide. She invited me to perform, and I was the only male performer there. And she had all these women from around the world there who had been through these horrific things, like terrible, terrible things. And I performed that piece that night, and it was like so heavy, it was like, it was so deep. And the same night I was going to New York to Slam. It was a Friday night. And I was part of the Friday night thing because you have to win on a Wednesday to perform on
Fridays, right?
So I go over on Friday and I get on stage, and I mean, they pick the order of the poets, and the first poet who gets up there does a poem that's like this crass, sexual, very kind of misogynistic, male toxicity poem. Like if there was a definition, this was it. Like, I will dominate you with my maleness. Like I don't even want to say, I don't know if we're allowed to curse, but anyway, it was pretty bad.
Okay.
And I watched him and I was like, it is my life's purpose to win this slam tonight.
And not that.
Exactly. So I did that poem, and I won the slam that night.
Okay.
And it was very profound because I had also done so much research, about it. I learned that 7 out of 10 women have been through that, So I was looking out at this audience of, 300 people. I was like, wow, so many people in this audience have experienced this. And so many people have come up to me at poetry events and stuff, said, "Yo, you're telling my story. Like that is my life, you know." But after that slam, this poet walks up to me. He's like, "Yo, man, like you winning all these slams with that. Like I got to write me a rape poem."
No, Lord.
And I was like, "Wow." So that is not the truth.
Right.
So don't do that, you know. But
Right.
the truth to me is like, you know, someone's genuine nature comes out through their art. I think people feel that, you know, like even if they're not, even if it's just pop music or something like that, if they're really giving of themselves, you know, like you feel it, you know. So I feel, you know, I always, everything that I do, I remind myself to tell the truth, you know, don't lie, don't front, don't try to be anything that you're not, and don't talk about something that you don't know. And if you don't know it personally, learn it, you know, and then speak of it in that way. Like, don't say I know, but say this is what I learned, and you know, figure out a creative way to do that. Right.
What are you working on now?
I'm working on a film.
Okay.
But actually, so the Red Plaid Suitcase was supposed to open on June 12th of 2020. And that was the third part of the trilogy that started with Broke Wide Open. And it got canceled. So I wound up making a movie based on it with my phone, which was crazy because I had never even held a camera in my hand before, but I felt like I just wanted to try to do that.
So COVID artistically pointed you in the direction of film, so to speak, during COVID.
Yes.
Prior to that, you weren't a filmmaker.
No, I didn't even think about it. So I hadn't even looked at the script of the Red Plaid Suitcase since COVID. I was so disappointed. I worked 2.5 years developing it, and I was crushed. So now I'm working on my third film, and it's the Red Plaid Suitcase, but it's a friend of mine pushed me to go look at the script again, and I read it, and I was literally like sitting on my bedroom floor weeping, reading the script. I was like, wow, I forgot about it, you know? But I had to go through a mourning process because, you know, I had spent so much time memorizing. It's like 2.5 hours, and I had to let it go to move on and do other projects. Like people think, you know, like people think you could learn something and then you have it in your head forever.
Right.
You got to let it go to move on to the next project.
Absolutely, I understand that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I went through a real mourning process because I never got to do it. You know?
Right.
So now I'm making a movie about re-examining that play.
Okay.
Except it's not me, it's a character and it's all kinds of other stuff, but I'm making a film called The Red Plaid Suitcase.
And what's the premise of it? I mean, can you share now,
Yeah.
even though you don't want to?
Oh, no.
Okay.
The premise is, it's actually, the film is about a guy who was supposed to open a play. So it's based on me.
Okay.
But then it goes away from me too. But the premise is somebody who was supposed to open a play. It was like the biggest project of his life, best work of his life, he felt. He was so ready for it. It was in a major theater. You know, it was supposed to be at the Signature Theater in Manhattan, which is a really important theater space. Shut down, and he went into the darkest depression and attempted suicide. Or almost attempted suicide, but things kept happening to stop him. Like every time he got there, something crazy happened. And so it's about that, but it's about him reopening this play, but reaching out to a friend of his who he thought he could count on to help him prepare for this play, because he said yes, but he's afraid that if it gets shut down again or anything happens, he's afraid to go back to that emotional place that scared him. And also, he's not as confident, you know? And so what happens is the woman he asked to help him, she disappears. And then there's all kinds of stuff very resonant to what's happening in the world right now. You know, all the political stuff and so that is part of it. And it's about community because he winds up reaching out to 6 other women to help him who he wasn't sure would help him, wouldn't be open to it. And everybody just steps in and helps him, and he creates this beautiful community at the end. And so that's all I'll say about it, because it's got the ending is crazy. Like it's.
Do you have a timeline on it?
No, but it'll probably take me, it depends on how much money I raise. if I don't raise enough money and I have to like live my life while I'm doing it, it'll probably take me a year to shoot it.
Okay.
You know, I've written it, the screenplay is done, and I've been writing it for a long time, and I had to rewrite it because I had some problems. So I'm making a film, and I'm going to do the play too. So while I'm, because I
didn't know
figured
you were
out,
going to do the play still.
well, I figured out that how can I learn this play and do this film? And I said, well, make the film about the play.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for me to do a lot of stuff that I'm doing in this film, I have to memorize the big, huge chunks of this play.
Gotcha.
So by the time I finish the film, I'll have the play back in my body, and then I can do it.
So tell our viewers how they can find you online, because I know that you're not on Instagram, you're not on Facebook. You know, Rock has shunned social media, and so
I
so
struggled.
so where can they find you and connect and support you?
Rockwilk.com and YouTube. I have a YouTube channel,
Mhm.
but my website, rockwilk.com, everything is there. And yeah, I've been in and out of social media. I struggle with it. We won't get into that.
Okay, I shouldn't unpack that.
Well, you can if you want.
You know,
You want to talk about that?
well, I mean, you know, yeah,
I mean, social media to me is, it's like a heart suck. You know what I mean? Like, I think the biggest problem I have, especially Facebook to me, is people who I love, who I know are good people, are like destroying one another, arguing about minutia, you know, like little details about how they said something. And I know that these people want the same things, you know, like they,
right.
so I don't like that. And Instagram, I just think scrolling and looking at yourself all day and getting caught up in that, for me personally, I just put too much into my work, and I can't, you know, I'm not a marketing guy. I'm not,
Right.
like, I had an amazing PR person, this woman, Suzanne Pinedo, who worked on Broke Wide Open. And, you know, that's what marketing people are
Right.
for.
It's
in my
much easier
opinion.
if you have a marketing
Yeah,
team.
I don't like to brand I don't look at myself as a brand and
Right.
all that kind of stuff. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I know that that's what it is now, but I don't do that. You know, like
Right.
I'm all about doing the work and growing and trying to be a better artist, and mostly trying to be a better person. And Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, they don't help me to do that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you. So here's a question before I turn it over to the audience. If there was a question, because you've done a lot of interviews, have you ever said, I wish the interviewer would ask me this question? What would the question be?
Wow. I don't know.
Has that ever like come across your mind any time?
I guess, well, that's like, what would I ask somebody? You know, what would I ask you? And, you know, I think I asked you a lot of questions during the film. So,
Yeah, you did. Mhm.
I don't, you know, like, I think you asked that question when you said, what does your work mean to you? You know what I mean? Like, what, you know, what's your hope of, what's your hope when you do it? You know, what do you want? Like, I think it's really important. Yeah, I would like for every interviewer ever to say, what's your point?
Mhm.
You know, like, what's your end game with your work? Because I remember once and, you know, again, this is just me. It doesn't have to be everybody, but I was once in a workshop. They used to have these workshops up in the Bronx, these poetry workshops, when I met this whole new community. And somebody was asking about, why do you write poetry? Why do you write music? Why do you write plays? Whatever. And somebody said, why does it have to be about anything? Why can't it just be like words and, you know, fun and like that? And I was like, why? You know, like, why? And, you know, I know a lot of people write for themselves, you know, and a lot of people, it's therapeutic, you know, but it's not for me.
Right.
You know, I write to get with the people. That's the only reason I do it. You know, I don't find writing therapeutic. You know, Dorothy Parker said, you know, I hate writing, but I love having written. And that's how I feel. Like, I want to get it done so I can get out there, you know, and share and be with people and build, because, you know, I'm a loner, you know, I'm kind of shy and to myself. And this gives me the opportunity to be with people. Right. You know, like, I really look forward to it. You know, you get all the hugs and you get to talk to people, and you know, I'm really a firm believer that, you know, art more than politics, certainly more than education, more than teachers, more than anybody. I feel like artists are the people who can really bring people together in a very powerful way, more than anybody. Because, you know, when I go out, I do these little tours when I'm developing a plan. I'll go around the country and I try to go to the most conservative places I could think of because, you know, we're always like preaching to the choir. You know, I've lived in New York City my whole life. So, of course, everybody in the audience can be like, yeah, racism sucks, you know. Like, but when you go to, you know, some of these other cities around the country and you get a meaningful response from people because, you know, like every time I write a character or anything that I do, my hope is that people see a part of themselves in everything that I do. You know, always. That's what I want. I want them to go like, that reminds me of me. And if I feel like if we do that, then we've done something special. So that's what I would ask. Like, what's your point? You know, what do you hope to accomplish? Because, you know, whether you're a plumber or an artist or an electrician or own a bodega, your hope should be to provide something for people, right?
To be of service.
Yeah. And you say that all the time. That's what it is. So I don't necessarily, I mean, I love doing the work, but I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it if it was just for me. That's why, you know, I'm a good musician. I was in the music business for a long time, but it never felt the same to me because, you know, I mean, I gig forever, but it wasn't the same as telling stories. It's a whole different, you know, it's like, that's what we need more than anything, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just told some students this afternoon, you know, those who tell the story hold the power. You know, and so do you want someone telling?
Better tell the truth.
Right, tell the truth, right. Or do you want somebody else telling your story, their interpretation of who you are?
Yeah, that's what's so cool about all these podcasts now that like pro athletes and actors get to have. Like it used to be that a critic or somebody writing an article got to create the dynamic, I mean, the narrative for a person. And now these people get to say, no, this is who I am.
Yeah, they get to have their voice.
Yeah, and if we, you know, the stories that we tell, it's a responsibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We could we can make bold choices and have a strong, you know, like leaning in either direction, but at least we have to tell the truth.
What would you tell your younger artists today, or the younger artivists within you? What would you say to that person?
I would say, get to where you got to at the end, you know, like, or, you know, like, don't listen to anybody but yourself at the beginning. You know, like do what you think is important. Don't let people guide you and tell you where you should go. And then after you screw it all up over and over and over again, which you will, learn from those mistakes and don't keep doing the same thing over and over again. But be genuine. I think that's what I would say. Be genuine. Because, you know, I went through a long time, like in music, people were trying to make me all kinds of stuff that I was very uncomfortable with just because I could do it. And they were like, they see money, you know?
Absolutely.
But it made me, like, music for me is very spiritual, but it made me hate music for a while. I didn't even listen to music for a long time after that because it was so negative for me. And it was just so about try to be a star. And I, you know, I came from jazz and all of a sudden I was in this pop world. And so, yeah, I would tell my young self, learn from your mistakes and don't ever stop until you die.
Amen.
Yeah.
So I see we have some audience members out here.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions for Rock? And speak up, please. Don't all jump at one time.
I have one.
Okay.
So what inspired you today?
Injustice. Like everything I do is born of the things that bother me. You know, anything that annoys me, I'm going to write about it. And I'm going to try to turn it, like I said, into something magnificent. You know, like I used to think like, just say it, you know what I mean? Like, but I actually think, you know, like, this film that I'm working on now has changed so much. It was originally brutal because what's going on in the world right now is brutal. And I thought over a really long period of time, I thought, I don't want to add to it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to add to this brutality. So I want to make something beautiful. So, and that's what I did with Brooklyn Quartet. You know, I took, you know, somebody who got shot 50 times by police who was unarmed, and I turned it into a love story. And so what inspires me is to never shy away from the difficult things, but to try to make them so palatable that everybody and anybody will be willing to receive the story. You know, like not just this group of people, like everybody. Try to include everybody, you know. One day, you know, that reminds me of one day I was walking down the Grand Concourse in the Bronx, and I ran into a friend of mine, which was so random because he had moved back to Oakland and we hadn't seen each other in a while. And we were both going to see an exhibit of the Young Lords at the Bronx Museum of Art. And he's somebody who I really respect and admire. His name's Tongo Eisen Martin. He's a really important poet. He's from Oakland, and he's also a professor. You know, he taught at Columbia, but he's like, you know, he's a genuine guy from Oakland, you know. And he said to me, you know, and he was kind of similar to me in a way, even though we're not really similar, but in this way we were, where he said, you know, me and you were always kind of on the outside, you know, like we don't get in with the popular crowd, and we're not trying to be, you know, popular or anything like that. He said, but, you know, we need to get on the inside. We need to get with the people who make decisions and who have the money. Like, we need to figure out how to do that. And he also said, and he goes, and we're just sitting there, and he goes, I also realized, you know, in order to really be a great artist, you got to be a great person. And so that inspired me, you know. I thought, that's everything, you know, like you could be a really talented person and all that, but I think that other level stuff where people who have like these levels of empathy that are hard for anybody else to really get to, you know. Like I just saw Sinners recently, you know, like Ryan Coogler. I feel like, you know, I watched so many interviews with him, and I feel like what's magical about him is his empathy. That's it, you know. I mean, there are so many talented, you know, directors, and yeah, he's great. He's amazing, but so is everybody. Everybody's great. But there's something about him that makes it special. And so that's what inspires me to try to, you know, connect people to make things better for all of us.
Yeah. My impression is that artists have to or work from sort of an outside position. They're outsiders, and they also have to understand everybody else. But their distinct perspective is what makes them an artist and refreshes the rest of us. And I think that my impression is that you're an extreme example of that you are in one sense highly individualistic and outsider. You use the word about yourself, a loner, and yet your ambition is, and I've seen it happen successfully, that you tell the rest of us who we are. And I guess what I'm really interested in, the way artists in general, but you in particular, negotiate that position between the outsider and the insider, or the outsider's lost soul and the insider's prophet.
Prophet. Well, you know, honestly, I feel like my, you know, like tendency to be a loner or to be an outsider, as you say, is born of trauma. You know, like I was disconnected from my birth mother. You know, I lived in foster homes when I was a baby. You know, like I feel like I have a lot of trauma, and I've been to therapy a lot. You know, and I always felt very different. You know, I never really felt a part of any groups. But the friends that I've had in my life have been like, you know, in my skin. Like I don't have any casual friends. I have friends who are like family. Like I got no, you know, like. I mean, you know, obviously I have plenty of acquaintances and I know plenty of people that I get along with, but people who I will like go share a meal with or hang out with or talk on the phone with all the time, these are like my family, you know? So yeah, I feel like it's the same kind of concept that I'm always reaching to connect with people, like that's the most important thing to me. And I guess for me, it's got to be extreme, which might be a good thing or a bad thing. And I think, like when I was a little kid, my grandmother used to say to me, "Oh my God, you're a lot. Nobody's going to be able to deal with you," because it's almost like I demand so much, to have a relationship with anybody, not just a romantic, but in any kind of friendship. And it only feels right to me if we're, in sync, and if somebody's willing to be as vulnerable as I am. I know I could be overwhelming for people, but my friends are kind of the same. Like they're like hurricanes coming at you. They just tell you everything. And very blunt. And really, like I'm so grateful to have friends in my life who are so huge, big people. They might be small in stature, like just big, powerful, emotional, people, all art, pretty much all my friends are artists and, non-negotiable kind of people. And a lot of people are not comfortable with that. A lot of people, yeah.
Question? Yes.
Yeah, you said when you were 5 is when you made your comment about the world, really, in
Yeah.
a sense. When were you conscious that you were going to be different? Or
Yeah.
and then you knew you were different, but when did it feel like it was your destiny?
Well, I think it all comes to, I was adopted, you know what I mean? So I knew I was different. Like that was a word that people used when I was little. You're different, you're like, it defined me, so I was very conscious of it. And, like to this day, I'm not connected to any cousins or uncles or aunts or anything like that. So I wasn't really treated like part of my extended family, my immediate family, definitely my parents. But I had a very difficult relationship with them because I felt different, and I was very quiet, until I wasn't. So it wasn't like, I didn't feel like it was my destiny necessarily. I felt like it was what it is, like this is what it is. Like I'm not like anybody. So that, I think that's been good and difficult, both in my life, because that is kind of like the definition of who I am. Like I have always felt, and it's something that I struggle to not want to feel all the time because I don't think it's a good thing. You know what I mean? Like it's good for certain things, but for other things to like be a part of people. And, like as I get older, I'm much more open to being more negotiable with the way people are with certain things. Like there are certain non-negotiables in my life, like that, like there are definitely things like that, but I think it's theater that helped me. I think it took me a long time to get to this point where it grew my empathy. I don't think I think I was more judgmental than empathetic for a long time, and that ain't good, So
When
that-
you say you define yourself as being adopted,
No, well, that's the definition of me. I was fostered and adopted. That's like reality. So,
but you were many other things.
oh yeah, but that in my mind, like you're saying, when did I know? That's the thing that I knew my whole life. Like I am like nobody else, and people treated me that way too when they found out. People think it's such a crazy thing, or it's the other extreme where they're like, oh, it's no big deal. But they have no idea. You know what I mean? They got no idea. And I learned that from doing Broke Wide Open because I met all these people, like people from all over the world would come to my show. One night, I did a show at the 45th Street Theater, like my off-Broadway production. There was an adoption conference at St. John's University. They literally bought every seat in the theater that night and showed up. So I had a theater filled with either people who were adoptees or first mothers, they call them, women who had been separated from their children. And oh my God, I learned a lot. Like it wasn't what I thought. It's a very deep world. And so Yeah, it took me a long time to change for the better. You know, to become. I think I've become a much better person than I was. You know, I was much more. It was harder for me to connect with people, and I do it easier now. Believe it or not. I know that might sound crazy to some people, but it's much easier for me now.
Anyone else? No? We good?
That's all you got?
That's all you got? That's all you got? What? So,
It's when you say it's easy for you to connect, building on Sabrina's perspective, is it easier to connect for you through art still, or do you find it easier to connect aside from art, if there's
In
a life
general,
aside from art?
Well, art is my gift. You know what I mean? So I look at them the same. I don't separate it. You know what I mean? Like I'm an artist, no matter what, and art is has been my conduit to being a better person and more well-rounded, and has made my life a lot easier. You know, which is crazy because if you're an artist, it's hard life. It's a very difficult life, but it's made my life so much better and easier, and got me through a lot of stuff that I had to deal with. So I think I use it even unconsciously sometimes because once you know who you are, that's everything. Whether you're an artist or not, if you know who you are and why you're here and what's your mission,
Right.
what's your mission statement, then life is good.
And I think that's a spiritual aspect about art in itself. If you are truly surrendering to it and being vulnerable, with it, then it leads you to a place of growth.
Yeah.
Now, whether if you choose to follow through on that it's another personal journey. That has to do with your fear and and how much courage you have and all that kind of good stuff.
It's like
But,
skydiving.
Yeah, it's like skydiving.
Every step is a little bit more difficult, but
Right.
a little bit more like amazing and magnificent, when you challenge yourself. Because I've done so many different things, and so every time you try to do something else, or you open yourself up, and it's life, like that's life to me. That's what life is, like it's a good life to be willing to be vulnerable and to never think like continue to learn. Like I don't ever feel like I know anything.
Yeah. Well, Rock, I hate to end it here, because we could talk all night.
We will.
Someone had another question? All right. One more question for you.
I'm fascinated by rock.
I know.
And when you talk about vulnerability and growing in that way, your name Rock is the least vulnerable thing in the Could you talk about how you?
So
Great question.
I think about that a lot, actually. I often think, like my grandmother called me Rock when I was a baby. So the story is that when the social worker brought me to my parents, who were fostering me at the time, I got adopted a year and a half later, I found out officially, but this was my fourth stop of foster care. My mother playfully slapped me in my butt and she broke her finger. And my grandmother was like, "Oh my God, he's like a rock." So because people think it was like a stage name or something like that. But
Right.
I've been rock my whole life, And but I often think if my given name is Alan, so
Right.
I'm Alan Wilk, and a lot of people know me from elementary school. They know me as Alan, but I think if I didn't grow up rock, I'd probably be a lot different. Because everybody, anytime I meet somebody new, it's like, "Yo, Rock."
Right.
Nobody's like, "Yo, Alan." So
There's a lot of power in the name.
yeah,
Absolutely.
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 I was talking about this yesterday with a friend, like people who have names like Passion or Flower or whatever. That's intentional. That's people empowering their children.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. Thank you to the audience members, for being here. Thank you to the online audience members for being here today. Support Rock, rockwilk.com. Real easy.
Check out my GoFundMe.
Rockwilk.com. Is that link on the
It's
on the website?
Everything's at the website, and so it's by the red plaid suitcase.
Okay.
So, thank you. for that.
Our next show will be in June, and I believe I spoke to Mike, so I think we're going to have Mike Jerkovich from Calling All Poets, a wonderful, wonderful artivist as well, who will be joining us. And so I just simply want to say thank you for being present, being here. I'm your host, Poet Gold. Live in purpose, live with gratitude, and live with love. Thank you.